Welcome everyone to this third and last day of INOCON, and thank you for joining us to this panel about how to get radio airplays. I'm here with Jesper Skibsby of Worm. I'm very pleased to host this panel with you. Jesper is the CEO and founder of Worm. It stands for World Airplay Radio Monitor, and it's a software that tracks radio airplays of any song in real time using technologies like fingerprint technologies and music recognition. And I hope that I kind of introduce you correctly, Jesper, and I think I'll leave you the field for this presentation because I know that you have some strategies that could be extremely helpful for artists and record labels, booking managers, and a lot of professional figures.
I hope so, and thank you so much, Tommaso, and I'm so happy to participate in this. I guess I will just jump into the presentation. I'll go through that, and hopefully we will have some relevant questions from the audience that we can go through.
Absolutely.
I hope so. Cool stuff. All right. Are you still with me? Tommaso? Perfect. Cool. So yes, as mentioned, my name is Jesper, and I'm the CEO and founder of WARM. It is an acronym for World Airplay Radio Monitor. So WARM is basically the first truly global covering automated radio monitoring service in the world. Our mission is very simple. WARM is disruptive accessibility to unlock the value of radio for every entrepreneur in music. And with entrepreneur, we mean music record labels. It could be artists, it could be managers, it could be radio promoters, booking agents, and so on. But what we see is that everyone in music industry is basically an entrepreneur, regardless of where in the space they are. So the current problem in the music industry in terms of radio data is that we have estimated that about 90% of the global music industry does not get their actual radio data. In most cases, radio data is basically only received locally. And obviously, this is a huge problem, especially to the long tail of the industry, the upcoming artists, the bands, the indie labels, the managers, etc. It is super important for them to be able to identify their radio airplays, even if it's in markets they did not know of. What we see with the help of streaming is that music is easily transmitted to other countries where you might or might not have done promotion, especially with the help of automated playlists, etc. So we actually see the benefit of streaming services being able to distribute music globally, and that's of course something that expands on radio for people to play different kinds of music from different kinds of places. So basically, WARM is solving this by using, as Tommaso mentioned, a combination of audio fingerprinting, AI, and music recognition technology. So this way we can identify exactly when and where a song is played on a radio anywhere in the world. And of course, this gives a lot of new opportunities to the music industry. We currently monitor about 28,000 radio stations in more than 100 countries. And these numbers is growing every day, primarily with the help of our users who can request new radio stations. One of the difficult situations with the monitoring radios is that there's a lot of different broadcasts or channels that change ownership. Some open, some change names, etc. So therefore, it is super helpful that our users and audience helps us locate new radio stations that we need to find. And on the right side here, you can see like just an overview of some of the countries or areas that we are monitoring. And as you can see, the most important music markets, or at least is probably where we have prioritized our coverage the most. And obviously, as you can see in the bottom, we still need to be better in terms of Africa, Brazil, Spain, and other countries like this. So the music industry standard services for radio monitoring, the ones that you see on our left side, these are basically very local services. So none of them basically covers the world. Some of them covers Latin American countries, some of them monitors European countries, some of them is more from US or North America. Some is very centered around Germany, Switzerland, Austria, for example. And this is, of course, a huge problem, because this means that if you want to have a global coverage, you would actually need to subscribe to a lot of different services. And these services are often super expensive, which again means that it is not financially accessible for the long tail of the industry. Also, these services, they usually monitor the biggest or the most important radio stations in a country or in the region, whereas Warm tries to basically monitor as many radio stations as possible. I usually say that we monitor everything from Capital, Kiss FM, and the biggest radios in the US and the UK to basically down to specialist radio, and I think we even have like 4 different radio channels in the Vatican state. So that gives like and basically we cover anything in between here. So I just wanted to quickly go through how the Warm platform looks like. This is an example with an artist called Matthew Wilder with a song called Break My Stride. And here you can basically see the general overview of where his song is played based on countries. And then, for example, you can expand into one particular country, in this case, Germany, and actually see down to the city level detailed data. In this case, you can see he is most popular with this song, at least in Berlin, then Kiel and Halle. So this is, of course, super relevant information if you as an artist or manager or whatever record label wants to promote your song, the artist, find your fan base, and of course optimize your efforts on getting the music out. And here again is a slide that shows the exact data points of when this song was played. So in this case, you can see that we have some US, Ireland, Sweden, UK, etc. And here you have the actual time and date stamp, and the duration of the play, the name of the channel, etc. So of course this gives the opportunity to work very detailed with the data that is provided. And in terms of the size of radio, as you can see here, we actually even monitoring a hospital radio in Bournemouth. So that's of course probably a very small radio. And here we also have an analytics dashboard where it is again easy to see the overall data of when and where your song has been played, what you can do with it, total amount of plays, cities, countries, etc. And this is of course possible to filter from the user side any way they like. So we were going to talk about how you could unlock the value of global radio data. So I put together some brief tips and tricks that I have tried and that a lot of our users have tried, and something that really makes sense and makes a difference in terms of working with radio. So the first recommendation I have is, of course, investigate the format of the radio that you're contacting. It is super important that you do not mass spam or something like that, but that you actually, if you have a rock song or an alternative rock song, maybe try and actually find if this radio station that you're sending it to also plays rock music, and do not just send a lot of emails to a lot of radio stations and think that is a good strategy. So that kind of takes me to the second topic, with this: be personal and rememberable in your communication with the radio station. So it is easy. It is super important that you are personal in your communication, that you do not spam a lot of radios with like a template email, but that you actually try and be personal to the person. So that takes us to number 3. So like, find the right curators, find the right persons at the radio stations. That could be on LinkedIn, it could be on social medias. So the same with the DJs that plays the music. Try to be as focused as possible when you want to send your music to radios, and again, be someone that they remember. So try and do something that is outside the box. That's something that we see works a lot. Then there is one certain thing that you can do with Warm as it is, and that is to basically track similar music. So again, if you have an alternative rock song that you want to promote, you could actually find a similar song. Maybe you're inspired by a bigger artist or something like that in the same genre. And then you can actually see what songs, what radio stations has played this similar song. Which means, again, then you have like a short list of radio stations that you could preferably target, rather than just shooting in blind, basically. Then I would highly recommend to think global and not local. So there is some sort of a myth in the music industry, predominantly by major labels, that you have to perform very well in your local country before they can take you to foreign countries, or when they want to focus on getting your music as an artist outside of your local region. And I think this is completely wrong, especially in the independent segment. Because again, as I mentioned before, with the help of streaming, music is distributed anywhere. And I bet that a radio host or a curator at a Croatian rock radio station, they are less interested to know whether your song is also, or whether the artist is also from Croatia, or whether the artist is from a different country. In most cases, especially with smaller and specialist radio, it can actually be a benefit that the artist or the song is from a different country. So this way it can It can basically bring some new energy to the radio station that they have found new and interesting music. We need to remember that it's about the music. It is not so much about where the artist or the band is from. Then I have mentioned here with the highlighted, do not trust reports. The fact is that as a lot of radio, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the systems is not globally covering. Also, they do not cover necessarily small or specialist radios, which means that if you, for example, receives a report from a major label in the UK, they do not have any data radio outside the UK, which means that you might be missing out on, of course, super important information, maybe for touring, for booking tours, or to do more in a market where which is not necessarily relevant for the major label in UK, for example. So I would highly recommend that if you receive reports also from radio promoters, etc., I think it's important that you ask questions and that you try to verify what has been reported. Also, there is a lot of radio stations that manually reports data, especially back to PROs, rights organizations, etc. And I do not believe this is the right way to do it. Of course, we need to have a verification of various radio airplays so that you know what's happened and you do not put this in the hands of humans. Of course, it makes more sense to use automation. So basically, take control of your own data, especially if you're an artist or a band or whatever. This is basically this is the gold. You really need to make sure that you know why are we targeting this country versus another country. Do we have a lot of radio airplay? Do we have similar trends on social medias? Do we have similar trends on Spotify or whatever? And not just go to think like because your song has been played the most in Mexico on Spotify, that does not mean you should focus all your energy on Mexico. There could be other reasons for this. It could be Spotify expanding in Mexico. It could be Mexico is a huge country. A lot of things can be the reason for this. So try and compare various data sources for you to be able to make the best possible decisions. And then especially for upcoming segment, there's a lot of talks about how can you get the money and so on. In terms of the royalties of the publishing or the neighboring rights, the problem with royalties in terms of radio airplay is that a lot of, like, basically all countries have different rules. There's a lot of market share payments. There's a lot of blanket license fees. It is very, very difficult to control. So I would recommend that at least for the independent segment, to focus your energy on the promotion and the marketing value over the royalties. Because yes, if you get played on BBC 2 or BBC 1, maybe that's maybe that's equivalent of, I don't know, 50 pounds, maybe 60, 70 euro per play. And that is, of course, a lot. But at the same time, it's super difficult to get airplay on BBC One. At the same time, you can have a small radio station, I don't know, Radio Soho or whatever, and maybe they play much more independent music. And maybe only for, I don't know, 10,000 listeners or whatever. But these 10,000 listeners are probably the ones that are more connected with the radio stations. These are probably the ones that is going to pay for tickets and be interested in new music and expanding their view on music, so to speak. So, but the radio station in Soho Radio is not necessarily a one-to-one payment based on what they play. And then back to the fact that this is just an example in the UK. All countries do this differently. Some countries change their rates on certain amount of stations once a year. Some does it once a month. Some does it every quarter. Some has a rate per second. Some has a rate per minute. It is very, very difficult to control. And in the end, the revenue might not be that big. So my recommendation is to focus the marketing and promotion value of the data over the royalties. But of course, the one thing doesn't exclude the other. But in the end, it is about promoting the music. So basically, I would say it is more important to have a large impact in a small market than to have a small impact on a large market. And the same goes for radio stations. If you can get connected with the smaller specialist rock alternative radio in Poland, Poland is still a country with 30-40 million people, and there's also a cultural difference in countries. So maybe in Poland they actually like rock music more than in other countries, so that could be actually more commercial here. Whereas other parts of the world, it could be reggaeton, it could be more clubby music that is, generally more popular. So if you are an artist, for example, based in Germany, do not think that you just have to perform well in Germany. It could very well that you have a lot bigger impact in Switzerland, Austria, or other surrounding countries. You have to remember that with the large markets and the large radios, you are competing with all three major labels. So of course, if you're an upcoming artist or a band, that can be super difficult. So basically, that was my short introduction to what you can do with radio data in general. And I hope we have some questions so we could continue with that.
Thank you so much, Jesper. It was like a very detailed overview of what Worma can offer to basically every sector of the music industry. We actually have a question from Arai that's, I think it's gonna like tackle back to what you said in the end about like even like try to place your music maybe in a very small and very niche web radio. And Arai, she wants to know what do you think about student radio network and college radios, not only in the US, but also in Europe?
That is actually something that we focus quite a lot on. This is a bit generalizing, but what we see is the smaller the radio station, the more independent mindset. So that means that if you work on a large commercial hit radio, you as a curator, you as a DJ, radio host, whatever, you probably don't have a lot of say in terms of what music is being played. It is important for them that you play the biggest new hits, international hits. Whereas with college radio, they work super independent. So therefore, they want to find more diverse music. They're not afraid to take a chance to play this new band if they like it. And in the end, from a marketing standpoint, let's say that a radio station, college radio in the UK, has played your song, and you use this as a trigger to actually write an email and thank them and say like, this is fantastic, and I love your radio station, and I would love to do more with you guys. If you want, we could do radio interviews, we could do mixtapes, maybe preferably in electronic music, but really focus your energy on establishing relationships. And that is something that you can do, especially with student radios. Most of the student radio, the people working at student radios, they don't get paid. So that is incentivizing for them to do this because of the love of music, and not because they just need to play Justin Bieber or a Sharon or whatever. So they do a lot more crate digging.
Absolutely. And I was thinking also like thinking about the strategy that an independent or an emerging artist can use with the access to Warm. In fact, I was thinking that you don't even need to have a song on a radio, but you can just say, okay, my band sounds similar to, I don't know, of Monsters and Men or something else.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna track what other bands are doing and where they are performing better in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit leeching, but but in the end, it is not really competition in that field. It is more about learning from what other similar bands or have done. Another thing I would mention with college radio, which is quite unique, is that regardless of 500 listeners or 5,000 listeners or whatever, it is usually very geographical specific. So I mean, you know, if your song is being played on a college radio in Toronto, you know, maybe there is 2,000 people listening, but they all live in the same area within, I don't know, 15-mile radius. They're probably all between 23 and, I don't know, 29. So there's a lot of demographics and interesting data that you can use a lot. Whereas that is not really the case with like a big terrestrial or you know, national radio.
And this could be extremely helpful, consider these demographics when you're actually planning a tour as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's very interesting, and the level of detail, it's I think it's extremely valuable. Maybe I understand that can be a little more not upsetting, but disarming in a way, to see all this data. But even with your interface, you can search for cities, search for audiences, search for groups of radio and so on. So it's able to get very into the detail of it. I want to close this panel, Jesper. We have 3 minutes left, talking very briefly about royalties and the fact that you talked about that due to the technology that you're using, you have you get the exact metadata, and it's a thing that with a manual report you always end up getting errors and even due to the human or a wrong or a minor error, and using your using Warm, actually you get the exact numbers and where that song is played, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you you cannot contact, for example, in Spain, Sky, you cannot just contact them and say, I was just on vacation in Sunny Beach or whatever, and I found out, I listened, my song was played on radio there, so when am I getting my money? I mean, that's not how it works. You have to remember that the PROs, they often have, you know, several thousand members. And as any other company, even though they are defined as organizations, as any other company, they focus where the money is. So if they have you know, they would go from top down, they will focus, try to get money for the biggest artist, because this is where they can get most money in administration fee. So if you're an upcoming artist in the bottom of 50,000 members, and you have the 7 airplays in Bulgaria, but you don't have any kind of verification, it was that is not something they can do anything about, and they are not going to do anything. But if you show them, listen, I had 7 airplays in Bulgaria, I had 7 airplays in this, and I had 20 here, and blah, 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 and here is the evidence to support it. There's a time and date stamp, so you know for a fact that this has happened. At least you have a much better opportunity for them to actually try and get the money for you. But I think that the main, let's say, the main challenge with royalties in this field is that they all work different. So like you can have the evidence of you having airplays on a particular radio station with all the data, and then maybe that is in Angola, and maybe Angola doesn't even have a PRO. So then nobody can get any money. It's like that is non-existent.
It's still a big mess. Jesper,
yeah,
I'll really thank you for your time. Unfortunately, we end up to we get into the end of our panel. I really want to thank you and the team from Warm for joining us and sharing your insights about radio airplays. And I wish you a nice rest of the day. And for all our audience and our guests, feel free to join the other panels of INOCON today. Thank you again.
Have a good weekend, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Tommaso.